start with leasing and property management. All right. So make my screen bigger. Okay, so everyone can see. So a lease begins on September 13th and ends on December 31st of the same year. What type of leasehold estate has been created? Is that A, periodic tenancy, B, tenancy at will, C, estate for years, or D, tenancy at sufferance? These are kind of tricky, so definitely knowing the definitions of each one is very helpful. I'm just making sure. Feel free to say it out loud or put your answers in the chat. All right, so the correct answer is going to be estate for years. And that is because so estate for years is a lease that begins and ends on a specific date is going to be called an estate for years. Whereas periodic tenancy starts on a specific date but ends after a period of time and is not with a specific date. I'll put this in the chat so I can reference. Next question. If a tenant pays a landlord on a regular basis and occupies the property for successive intervals of time, the tenant would most likely have which of the following leasehold estates? Is that A, tenancy at will, B, periodic tenancy, C, estate for years, or D, tenancy at sufferance? So if a tenant pays a landlord on a regular basis and occupies the property for successive intervals of time, the tenant would most likely have which of the following leasehold estates? Periodic tenancy. So its periodic tenancy is correct. So estate for years begins and ends on a specific date rather than on those lasting for intervals of time. And then the periodic tenancy or estate from period to period lasts until the end of each month or until the end of each year, and usually contains a rollover provision. So it's either month to month or year to year. Whereas tenancy at will can be terminated without advance notice by either the landlord or the tenant. And then tenancy at sufferance exists when a holdover tenant remains on the property after the lease has expired. So definitely knowing like various examples of that um, is very helpful for the exam and knowing the difference between each one. And like, for example, the periodic tenancy can be month to month or year to year, whereas the state for years is specific dates. All right. What type of lease would you expect the property manager to negotiate during periods of high inflation? Is that A, land lease, B, net lease, C, index lease, or D, fixed lease? So what type of lease would you expect the property manager to negotiate during periods of high inflation? not D. All right, I actually thought it's fixed lease too, so it will be index lease, and let's see why. So during periods of high inflation, a landlord would prefer a lease that is indexed to the inflation rate. This would increase the rent amount as inflation increase. A net lease requires tenant to pay rent plus taxes, insurance, and utilities, but does not address the rate of inflation. And then in a fixed lease, rent would not be influenced by inflation. During a rise in inflation, the landlord would realize less dollar per rent, dollar collected. So I feel like this is definitely a poorly written question because it asks what one you would like to negotiate. So if you had a fixed lease, that's when negotiation would happen. But when there's periods of high inflation, having an index lease accounts for that. So honestly, I feel like either question could be correct, or either answer could be correct. But I guess the better of the two is going to be that index lease. A property manager leasing the property to a third party acts as what type of agent? Is that A, a general agent, B, a special agent, C, a universal agent, or D, a limited agent? So a property manager leasing the property to a third party acts as what type of agent? The correct answer is going to be A, and that's a general agent. And that says a general agent may handle all of the principal's affairs in one specific area. So a property manager is going to be a general agent. Okay, next question. Which of the following would you expect a property manager to do for the owner of an apartment complex? Would be A, draft leases for tenant signatures, B, list the property for sale, C, initiate action of the recovery of rent, or D, rehab and convert the property to a condominium. The question. So it's going to be initiate action for the recovery of rent. So converting apartments to condominiums is usually done by a developer or an attorney. And then the manager, property manager, usually initiates the action for the recovery of rent. And the listing for property sale is the duty of a real estate agent, not a property manager. And then the drafting of a lease must be done by the owner or an attorney. Yeah, good job. Okay, cool. Wow, there's only 5 questions. Back to dashboard. All right. Let me know whatever topic you guys want to focus on. I just started from the bottom today. So feel free to pick whatever which one you like. Calculation. Okay. All right. A mortgager had a $43,000 loan at 7%. What would the new principal be after the third payment if the monthly payment was $287? So if a mortgager had a $43,000 loan at 7%, what would the new principal be after the third payment if the monthly payment was $287? for a second to do it. Also for you. Okay, so whoops. Oops, I did not make a select one, but anyway, so this was the question, and then the answer is, so how we do the math to this is you would do 43,000 times the 7%, which will then equal $3,010. Then you divide that by 12 months. So the interest for the first month would be $250 and about 83 cents. Then you take the monthly payment and subtract it by that month's interest to find out how much goes towards the actual principal. So the 287 minus the 250, $250.83 equals $36 and around 17 cents. Now for the second payment, subtract the paid principal. So it would be the $43,000 minus that $36 and about 17 cents to then get $42,963.83. Next, determine the yearly based on the new principal amount, which will be then that $42,963.83 times the 7%. And you do that again to get the third month amount. So you would subtract the 287 minus the 250 to then multiply it by the 7%. Divide that by 12 to get $250.41. So then you take that. Again, you basically just repeat each month based off of the last month's principal, rounding to the nearest dollar. So when you go ahead and subtract, you can check the accuracy of your answer. Let's see, you can check the accuracy of your answer with the shortcut method by finding the first month's principal payment and multiplying it by the payments asked in the question. So it'd be 36. So the first month's payment would be that $36.17 times 3 equals $108.50. Then you subtract that from the original loan amount and you get about this close to the same amount of $42,000 and $42,891.50. So right here, this would be the closest answer, so that would be the best choice. Honestly, since your exam is timed, definitely just doing the shortcut way is the best. I'll break this down. So just so you can see what the long math equation would be, and then using the short method because it doesn't have to be super accurate, just has to be correct. And normally the questions on the exam are the answers on the exam are very similar to this, where it's off by only a few numbers. Okay. That was a tough first one. Next question. A driveway must be replaced. It is 32 yards long, 9.5 feet wide, and the concrete will be 4 inches thick. If concrete costs $153 per cubic yard, what is the cost to replace the driveway? I don't want to confuse anyone and read off the answers. So I'll just wait a minute or two so we can go ahead and do the calculation. Okay. Feel free to put your guesses in the chat. Can you throw me out my charger? Okay, I'll come get it. Okay. So the correct answer is going to be 1,722 and 49 cents. And this is going to be a three-part calculation. So first, knowing how many yards are in a foot. So 32 yards equals 96 feet. So then 9.5 feet. I don't know why it says 9.5 feet equals 9.5 feet. But then 4 inches equals 0.33 feet. And then you multiply that to get the cubic feet. So you would do 96 times 9.5 times the 0.33, and you get 303.96 cubic feet. So since the concrete is priced per cubic yard, you would then need to convert that in cubic feet to cubic yard by dividing it by 27. Then you do 303.9696 divided by 27 and get 11.2581 cubic yards. Finally, multiply the cubic yards by the price per cubic yard to get the total cost to replace the driveway. So that 11.2581, which is the cubic yards, times $153 equals $1,722 and about 49 cents to replace the driveway. This was a tough one. Oh, these are both super hard. Honestly, you'll have only a few math questions on the exam. Saving those for the end, I highly recommend because you'll spend the most time on them and there's only pick a select few. I'm going to say I probably had less than 5. So don't get too caught up on the math equations, but knowing like the basics on like how many feet are in a mile and the basic conversions it's going to be super helpful. Okay. Oh, and definitely knowing the mills. That will also be helpful. Oh, yeah. So which tax rate would be used if a property assessed at $184,950 generates at $12,022 in taxes? So there will be a few of these. So definitely knowing assessed value, that equation, as well as the mills. This is very helpful when calculating questions like this. But the cubic yard one to be just over my head as well. Okay, I'll give you guys a few minutes. Oh, here's one.
Here. Good.
Smiley fine. Okay. Any guesses? All right, yeah, let's try A. So it would be B. Oh my God. So the formula for this would be the tax rate equals property taxes divided by whole. Okay, so it would be basically tax rate equals property taxes divided by assessed value, and then you would plug in from there. So definitely knowing just like this equation, tax rate, I'll put this in the chat as well. These could get a little confusing. So when you do $12,022 divided by $184,950, you get 0.0650. So you want to multiply that by 1,000. And that's because 0.001 equals 1,000. For 0.001 mils equals 1,000. So that's how you would find out how many mils would be in that year of your taxes. And it'd be 65 mils. We're trying to simplify it by doing percent, which is going to be that tax rate. So they didn't give us the tax rate here. That's what we are calculating. So we would just do the equation of part, which is the lower number, divided by the whole, gives you that tax rate after you multiply by 1,000. Right. The sale of a property will close on July 7th, 2010. Taxes are $2,950 per year and are paid through the last half of 2009. Calculate the seller's share of taxes using a calendar year, 365 days. Okay. There will be similar questions. And it's nice when they give you the calendar year. Fill that in, this equation. Okay. All right. So with a good guess, I was actually still kind of doing it. So the first thing to do is calculate the cost per day. So what they did, sorry, I'll put this down, making sure. So they did $2,950. So this is per year. And then they divide that by 365 days, which equals around $8.08. Then you want to determine the number of days for which the taxes haven't been paid, and that's going to be January 1st. Or so January has 31 days, February is 28, March 31, April 30, May 31, June 30, and then July has only 7 days, which equals a total of 188 days. Then multiplying the number of days at the daily tax rate of $8.08 is going to get you $1,519 and around 45 cents. So the seller owes that in taxes. Right, I was actually doing this wrong. So definitely like reading through the question. So this is what it will close on in July 7th, 2010. And so they're asking how much the seller paid through last half of 2009. So you don't have to calculate anything in 2010. You're calculating the prior year. All right. Next question. A salesperson receives a commission of $5,940 as half of the total commission. The sale price of the property was $198,000. What rate of commission did the broker charge? Okay, this will be a fun one too. Definitely a great one to know. So a salesperson receives a commission of $5,940 as half of the total commission. The sale price of the property was $198,000. What rate of commission did the broker charge? So there's various ways that you can go ahead and calculate this. One of the ways which I suggested was doing the sale price at 198 times one of these percent. So if I did the sale price times 5.75%. Oh, this one doesn't do it for you. Okay, times 5.75% equals, then you would divide that by 2. Okay, so that is not the correct answer. So then you would go to the next one times 3.25 percent equals, and then you want to divide that by 2 because it's half, and that is not the correct answer. And then you want to do this times 6% equals that divided by 2 between the two salespeople, and you get $5,940. So the correct answer would be 6%. and you get your $5,940 as half of your commission. Now that's a great way to check your answer, but the better way to calculate this would then be doing what did they do? Percent commission rate per wholesale and plug in. They kind of did similarly by doing 5,9. Oh, so they actually did 5,940 plus the 5,940 equals the 11,880. And then they divided that by the total sale price to get the 6% rate. Again, the percent equals part divided by whole, kind of similar to the previous one we did. And then definitely knowing where to plug it in and when. Then a great way to check it is kind of do it the way I just explained. All right, next question. A property was sold for $189,500. The salesperson involved in the transaction received 30% of the broker's 5.5 commission. How much money did the salesperson receive? All right, so this is kind of similar as if like you would obtain a referral fee. So you would do $189,500 times that 5.5 commission. And then you would multiply this by 30%. And you would get $3,126.75. All right. I'm sorry, I lost my train. So this was an easier one, because it's nice that it gives you already the commission, the sale price, and then you just multiply the total commission to then obtain how much you would receive in the referral. Okay. Next question. A property sale will close on March 31st, 2010. Taxes are $4,360 per year and are paid through the first half of 2009. Calculate the seller's share of taxes using a 365-day year. All right. So just like we did in the previous question, get the per day amount, calculate the days of the month, each day of the month, multiply that by the tax rate per day to then get what the seller's share of taxes would be. Poppy, how Poppy, you can't have. Hey. Can you just give him another bone? Yeah. Maybe a 2 bones? Both. Okay. Who's going to play? Go get him. Go get him. Sorry about that. Give everyone another minute. Go ahead and try calculate. Got any guesses? Mm, I'm also guessing on this one, so feel free to shout out your guess. I'll put it in the chat. Okay, so the correct answer is going to be that $3,272.98. So the seller will be responsible for taxes from July 1st, 2009 through the date of closing. For the first, calculate the number of remaining in 2009. So July, August, September, October, November, December. And then you would figure another 184 days. So then you would also want to add in the beginning of 2010, which would be 31 days, 28 days in February, and then the 31 days of March. So the total of 90 days. So obviously 184 plus 90 is 274 days. So after you calculate that of how many days, then you want to see how much money you owe per day, which will be then when you do the $4,360 divided by the 365 days equals around $11.95. Multiply that by the $274 and you get $3,272.98. So this is kind of confusing because you needed to do the 6 months of 2009 and then the additional 3 months of 2010. But once you see it once, then you'll know how to do it the next time. Okay, next question. If the listing salesperson gets 30% of the total commission on a sale and the selling salesperson receives 40% of the remainder, how much would the salesperson receive if they were both the selling and listing salesperson on a $220,000 sale at 6% commission? Okay, so there's multiple parts to this question. So I know during the exam you will have like a calculator similar to this one. No need to bring a calculator. Right, let's see. So it would be D. And the reason for this, so when you do the total commission, the 6% of the $220,000, you would get $13,200. Then you want to multiply that by the 30%, which you get $3,960. And then you would do the $13,200 minus that $396, $3,960, which will then equal the $9,240. Then you multiply that by the 40%, and you get $3,696. Add those together, and that's how much you would receive for the $7,656. Yeah, this was tricky because you have to find the one amount of the total, which is at 30%, then subtracting that from the $13,200 to then equal that 9,240. And then that is when you would use the $9,240 times the 40%, because it's the remainder. You get that $3,696, add them together. If you represent both sides, and that's 7,656. Yep, these are hard. All right, good job. Next question. The premium for 2-year insurance coverage on a home is $850. If the insurance was purchased and paid for July 15th, 2009, and the closing will take place April 12th, 2010, what credit is due using a 365-day calendar? So the premium for 2-year insurance coverage on a home is $850. If the policy was purchased and paid for on July 15th, 2009, and closing will take place April 12th, 2010, what credit is due? Chat. So with this, you'll be kind of doing a lot of like adding, subtracting. After you divide, find out how much per day. Add how many days. You can get the total of how many days subtracted by that 850. By any guesses? So the correct answer is gonna be the $533.29. And how they calculate that. So the account that the policy would expire July 14th, 2011. So when you do the 850 divided by 2 equals $425. Then you divide that by 365 and you get 1.16. So 1.1, so $1.16. Then the number of days, which will be, see, they did 18 days remaining in April, 31 days for May, 30 days for June, 14 days for July, which would then equal $93 or 93 days, sorry. And then you would multiply that by the $1.16, which is going to be $108.29. Then you want to find that amount. So then you do that $108.29 plus the $425 for the full year. Since you're selling within a year, you have to account for the $425 credit that they will receive. Then you get that for $533.29. And that's how much the seller would receive back from their insurance coverage. Next question. Okay, parcel of land described as, my dog keeps getting the squeakiest of all toys to play. Okay. So a parcel of land described as southwest 1/4, southeast 1/4, northwest 1/4 of section 13 sells for $500 per acre. What is the sale price of this property? Okay, probably do this one. So knowing how many the section, forget the formula for this. So definitely knowing the formula of, I can't even remember the terms. I know like how many per section and then how many of that equals the whole parcel.
Come here. Hey.
Moose, go get him. Go get him. Go get him. Moose, go get him. Can you get his tennis ball? There. Right, if anyone now has an idea of the formula. I feel like there was probably 1 or 2 questions about this, but You just memorize it for the exam and you don't really have to worry about it again. So yeah, so one section equals 640 acres. Any guesses? Um, to the in-person exam, so you definitely need to bring your driver's license. I think you can bring a pencil, and a calculator, but they do have a calculator there for you. So you, honestly, they may take that since there is one on the computer. But you can bring a pencil and then they give you, actually, I don't even think they give you a piece of paper. So honestly, just bring your ID and that's it. And then don't wear any like hoodies or anything because they will have you like take that off when you're there. So definitely just wearing like either a zip up they can take off and just dressing comfortably for the exam.
Yeah.
I did mine virtually and I couldn't have like, you can't have anything on your desk at all. And you have to like give like a 360 view of your room, ceiling, under the desk. Desk had to be completely um empty. Everything around you is empty. And then you can't even like have your phone by you. You have to like take a video of you putting your phone across the room. And then during the virtual exam, they also have like obviously camera on and your volume on. You can hear things so far away. And then you just have like an online proctor who would message you. But for yeah, so for the in-person, believe since I did mine virtually, I can't remember. I think you just bring your ID and that's honestly the only thing you'll need. I don't think they even give you a piece of paper or a pencil because you'll have a calculator on your screen. Honestly, it's very similar to this calculator or like this setup, but not colorful. I think it's all black and white. So the correct answer is going to be 5,000. And so since there is 640 acres in a section, using that as the denominator, so you do 640 divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. Okay, now it's coming back to me. So how you would calculate this, you would do 640, then you would divide that by 4, divide by 4, then divide by 4 one more time, and then you get 10 acres. So then you would multiply 10 acres by $500 and you get $5,000. So again, you start with the 640. So it would be 640 divided by 4, divided by 4, divided by 4 equals, I have no idea. 640 divided by, divide by 4 equals, then you want to divide that by 4, then you want to divide that by 4 one more time, and you get 10, and then you want to multiply that by the 500, and you get basically the $5,000. Okay, I knew this was kind of a simpler way, but I could not figure out the formula. I know, right? I also tried to make like one of those like little circle and T maps, but yeah, they do not have anything you can bring or allow you to use to even just do scratch work, unfortunately. Okay. Well, that was a good topic to do because that helps also me review. Now my brain hurts, but definitely just knowing the using that formula where it's like the circle and then the T chart on what goes on top, what goes on bottom, and knowing where to plug in the various numbers will definitely be very helpful in the exam. Let me just real quick see if I go to the calculations. Let's see. I was hoping that they give me a better like list of formulas for you guys to view. Unfortunately, I don't see that. If I can find the document, let's see. I know I had a list of formulas that was super helpful. I think it may be in like one of your books that helped with it was just like a page of all the formulas. Definitely just reviewing that prior to the exam will be helpful so that you don't have to fret about memorizing all of the calculations. And definitely reading through each question specifically on using that calculator, what it's asking for per month. That was the big thing. And then knowing how to convert the sections by acres and then how many acres are in a foot. All of those conversions will be definitely very helpful for you as well. But also don't get caught up on math because it's only like a small portion of the exam. And we'll do this, we can do another one this next week. What I did want to mention, so next week's, the study sessions are going to now go to Thursdays and they're going to be same time, 4:30, 5:30 on Thursdays. So the next study session is going to be Thursday, May 16th. And I'll send a reminder to everybody as well that it's going to be on Thursday, May 16th. And again, thanks so much for joining and feel free to pop on to our CWGM YouTube channel for any of the recordings to do some like press similar to this practice exam. I'll put this in the chat. Okay. And I liked using also Quizlet was a great resource to me as well. All right. Thanks, guys.